Imagine paying dues for years, only to have the HOA threaten to dig up your father's ashes because your backyard memorial wasn't on the approved color palette. What would you do if the same people shut off your water on purpose, then fined you for the dead grass they caused? My name's Noah McCade. I'm a 39-year-old electrician with calloused hands, a crooked smile, and a habit of overbuilding every fence post I touch. I moved back to Cedar Hollow after Mom's stroke. Bought a sun-baked ranch house with a sagging porch and a pecan tree that drops shells like gravel. I wanted quiet somewhere to put the world down. Instead, I met Karen. Yes, that Karen. HOA president. Blonde bob like a helmet. Sunglasses the size of hubcaps. She carried a clipboard like a scepter and talked in a syrupy whisper that made you feel scolded even when she said sweetie. First week I'm back. She left a welcome packet, fat as a church hymnal bylaws. Color swatches. A suggested landscaping plan that looked like it was drafted by a golf course architect with a ruler fetish. I tried to play nice. I painted the mailbox a shade called salt-washed oyster, even though it looked exactly like plain white. I moved my work truck into the garage every night. I fixed the porch rails. And on the anniversary of Dad's passing, I set a small, rust-brown steel cross quiet, handmade under the pecan tree, with a river stone ring and a flag. Dad fought fires for 27 years. He taught me how to splice wires and how to keep my word. It wasn't fancy. It was ours. 2 mornings later, there was a notice on my door, unapproved structure. Remove immediately. Fine begins at $100 per day. I laughed. Then I didn't. Because attached was a photo of the memorial, circled in red like a crime scene, and below it, in tidy italics, remains must be stored in an interior space until architectural committee approval. Remains. They wrote that like my father was a lawn ornament. I walked to the HOA office, a converted model home that smelled like copy toner and lemon cleaner. The receptionist looked up with eyes that said she'd seen too many small battles fought with too much perfume. Is Karen in? She's with the architecture committee. The receptionist replied. Do you have an appointment? Not really a calendar, kind of conversation. I said. Karen swept out like a matinee villain. Noah. She sang. You should have scheduled time. We're very busy, aligning the community's visual harmony. Visual harmony, I said, trying not to choke on it. It's a cross for my dad. Under my tree. She clasped her clipboard to her chest. We honor service. Truly. But we cannot permit improvised installations. There's a process. I breathed in. Tasted old coffee on my tongue. The process is me. In my yard. Minding my business. Karen's smile thinned. Please submit Form 7 with swatch options. Driftwood taupe is acceptable. Redwood is less so. The next week. A new notice. Unauthorized flag. Height exceeds 6 feet. Please replace with an HOA-approved flag stand. The week after. Another work truck, visible through garage window curtain required. Then, trash bins rolled out too early. Then, grass height exceeds 2 inches. Except the grass part wasn't my fault. On the first day of July, the water stopped. Faucets coughed air. The hose sputtered like a smoker. I checked the shutoff box at the curb padlocked. A fresh silver lock that didn't belong to me. A sticker. Bright as a bruise managed meter. Contact HOA Utilities. I stared at it. Dumb. Utilities were city-run. The HOA had nothing to do with water. I called. Got a voicemail maze. Pressed 1 for billing. 2. For outages. 3. For compliance partnerships. When a human finally picked up, she recited a script due to landscaping, nonconformity, and pending violations. Irrigation privileges are suspended. Ma'am, I said. You can't suspend what you don't own. That's policy. No, I said. Voice steady as a stud finder. That's harassment. By day 3, my yard looked like toast crumbs. Karen came by, in her pastel blazer, gaze sweeping the lawn like a surveyor. It pains me to see a property fall out of alignment, she said, almost purring. Shall I connect you with our preferred landscaper? He can install drought-tolerant gravel and artificial turf. Special rate for non-compliant lots. That a threat or a sales pitch, I asked. Just neighborly assistance. She tucked a card in my shirt pocket like she was pinning a boutonniere. Oh, and the memorial. You have until Friday. I almost told her to leave. Instead, I grinned. Sure. Karen. Friday. That night, I pulled out Dad's battered lockbox deeds. Receipts. A folded flag certificate with creases soft from years of being handled. I poured coffee, clicked on the desk lamp, and started reading. Because that sticker, managed meter, it smelled wrong. In the closing packet for my purchase, 3 months of escrow panic condensed to a fat manila folder, I found it, a plat map. Streets drawn like arteries. My lot shaded. And a narrow strip along the curb labeled Public Utility Easement 10 feet. The city owned every inch under that sticker. Not the HOA. Okay. I whispered. Okay. Old man. Let's dance. Next morning, I drove to City Hall. Clacked boots across a terrazzo floor older than anyone behind the counter. The clerk, a guy with a tie, the color of faded avocado, looked like he'd done 20 summers in that room. Sir, I asked, who controls the curbside water shutoffs? City, he said, not looking up. What if a private entity locks one? He looked up. They don't. I showed him the photo. His eyebrows climbed his forehead like squirrels. Who? That's a lawsuit. Do I need a lawyer? I asked. Or a wrench? Both, he said. But you didn't hear that from me. He typed. Printed. Handed me 2 things. A copy of the easement and a letter on city letterhead that said, in so many words, unlock that meter now. I drove home. Karen was on the sidewalk with 2 women I'd started calling the committee, matching capris, matching expressions. She pointed at my lawn like a general reviewing a failed parade. I knelt at the curb box, slid in a flat key. The silver lock popped like cheap jewelry. The water hissed alive through old copper, a sound so beautiful it made my throat pinch. Karen's heels clicked across concrete. You can't tamper with a managed public utility, I said, waving the city letter. You locked a city valve. She read it. Her smile didn't break. But something behind it did. We only acted in the community's best. Best what? Best chance to force me to buy turf from your brother-in-law. Dad's cross stays. The water stays. This is my yard. Karen. Her jaw tightened. We'll see, she said. We did. By Monday, I had 9 fines in my mailbox. Late fees. Administrative assessments. Threats to record a lien. I felt a throb behind my eyes that tasted like copper and fury. I wanted, to kick a trash can across the street. Instead, I drove to Mrs. Arroyo's. She lived 3 doors down. 82 Widowed. Kept azaleas so bright they looked plugged into the wall. She'd been here since Cedar Hollow was farmland. "Señora," I said. "You have your old paperwork." She smiled like she knew exactly why I was asking. Her hands, thin as leaves, brought out a binder thicker than a phone book. "I keep everything." "Mijo." I turned pages. There it was, the original CCRs from, get this, 25 years ago. Halfway down, a line most people gloss over. "These covenants shall expire 25 years from the date of recording, unless extended by written instrument by at least 67% of homeowners." There was no extension attached. I whispered. "You seeing this, Mrs.?" Arroyo tapped the clause with a knuckle. Karen didn't. The covenants had sunset. The rules were a ghost wearing lipstick. I called the title company. They confirmed it. No recorded extension. The agent said, if the HOA didn't renew, enforcement is problematic. Problematic. I repeated. That's lawyer for dead in the water. Right, he laughed. That's me not giving advice on a recorded line. That night, I barely slept pacing the hall, swearing at the ceiling fan when it squeaked. My brain kept doing this drumbeat. They don't own you. They don't own you. At 3 in the morning, I dug into county records. Coffee gone cold. Eyes sandy. I searched Cedar Hollow Association. Budgets. Meeting minutes. Reimbursements to a Preferred Landscape Solutions owned by Surprise Karen's cousin. Printing invoices from KF Admin Services. Little circles of cash traveling in tight little loops. By sunrise, I had a plan. Not a fight. A reveal. On Friday, the day Karen circled in red, I set up folding chairs in my driveway and posted in every neighborhood forum I could find. Free barbecue. Bring your lawn chair. Ask me why your dues keep going up. At noon, I fired the smoker. The smell of hickory pulled folks like a magnet. Old neighbors. Young families. The guy with the loud Harley that Karen hated. People brought lemonade and curiosity. I made a small sign that said, I'll talk when Karen arrives. She arrived. Of course, she did. In heels. In heat that melted the road. She marched up like she was late for a coronation. This is an unauthorized assembly, she said. This is brisket, I said, handing her a plate. Take a seat. She didn't, but everyone else did. I stood on a cooler, felt ridiculous, felt brave. I ain't a lawyer, I began. I'm just a guy who reads the fine print when folks push too hard. We keep getting fines for dumb things. We got water locks showing up on city valves. And turns out, the rules Karen waves around, they expired 25 years from recording. No extension. I have the record. Murmurs. Sharp inhales. Someone said, no way. I held up the stamped page. Way. Karen laughed a brittle sound. That is an outdated draft. Then, where's the extension, I asked? Gentle as a hammer. Where's the vote? Silence thick as molasses. I turned to the crowd. Also, quick peek at reimbursements. Preferred Landscape Solutions, owned by Karen's cousin. KF Admin, that's Karen initials match the LLC. I ain't accusing. I'm just showing what's public. If you're paying dues, don't you want to know where they go? Karen pointed at me like she was selecting a contestant for a game show. Defamation. Receipts, I said, holding up printouts. Mrs. Arroyo stood, voice Steady. I paid dues to keep the pool clean. Not to keep your cousin employed. Mia. Things got loud. Not ugly, just awake. There's a moment when a neighborhood remembers it's a neighborhood. Not a classroom being graded by a strict teacher. You could feel it, like when summer rain breaks heat. Karen made the rookie mistake of trying to shout down an 82-year-old azalea queen. Sit down. Dolores. She hissed. No one sat pat. People stood taller. A big, quiet man named Wes worked nights at the distribution center said, "Let's vote." "You can't." Karen snapped. "We can," I said, lifting another page. The bylaws, back when they were alive, say homeowners can call a special meeting with a simple majority. We have well over that standing in my driveway. A hand vote tore the air like a flag flipping. Suspend fines. Hands rose. Cancel liens. Hands. Freeze reimbursements, pending audit. A sea of palms under a pecan tree. Karen's mouth worked like a fish on a dock. "You can't. We just did," said Wes. Then, the universe added its own drum fill. A white city truck rolled up. The same clerk from the avocado tie office stepped out with a supervisor. They walked to the curb box. Photographed the sticker. Photographed the lock. Took notes. The supervisor turned to Karen. "Ma'am," he said. Voice, gentle like a warning. "You can't put locks on city valves." He handed her a copy of the letter I'd shown. Remove them all by Monday. Karen's face went the color of undercooked chicken. She pivoted heels slipping on a pecan shell and marched to her SUV. The crowd parted like a slow tide. No years. Just the kind of silence that says, "We see you now." You'd think the story ends there. It didn't. Howard never leaves quietly. 2 days later, a compliance patrol in polo shirts banged on my door at 6 in the morning. "Inspection," one announced, flashing a plastic badge that looked like it came from a party store. "We have authority to enter backyards for code review." "No, you don't," I said, yawning. "That's called trespass." I pointed to the camera at the eave. Smile. They pushed past my gate anyway. The taller one whispered into a radio like a child playing soldier. I walked around the house, slow, calm. You know that feeling when you're almost amused because someone's picked exactly the wrong guy that, "Hey," I said, voice level, "out. Now." Failure to comply. The tall one barked. He grabbed my fence latch. I grabbed his wrist. Not hard. Just enough to make a point. "Leave." They left. I sent the video to the same city supervisor. Then I printed the state trespass statute, big letters, and zip-tied it to the gate. "Backyard is not a common area. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Underneath. Smaller, also. "Mom naps at 2. Don't ring." That afternoon, Karen posted in the neighborhood app, "Beware of aggressive homeowner at Lot 33. Hostile. Possibly dangerous." People in the comments wrote, "Noah gave me free brisket." Noah fixed my porch light for nothing. Noah watered my garden when I was in the hospital. It turns out reputations beat rumors when there's, receipts. The board tried one last move, threatened to record a lien for unpaid special assessments. I drove my copy of the sunset clause to the county recorder. Filed a notice of covenant expiration with every parcel number in the subdivision. The clerk looked at the thick stack and whistled. "You about to make some friends," he said. That night, Karen showed up alone. No clipboard. No sunglasses. She stood at my fence, like a kid who broke a lamp, and didn't know how to tell her mom. "You've humiliated me," she said. I shrugged. "You humiliated yourself." Her jaw trembled. "There's people who need me. You know, there's people who need a pool pump that doesn't rattle like a blender," I said. "There's people who need a treasurer who can add without skimming." She blinked, softened for half a second. Then the steel came back. "You think you've won, I think," I said. "We remembered we're neighbors." She left. The pecan leaves whispered. Somewhere down the block, a wind chime dared to live free. Over the next month, we did the boring, necessary work that never goes viral. We formed a committee that actually, represented folks. We hired a real accountant. We got a city liaison. We replaced the pool pump with a unit that didn't scream. We paid the lifeguard on time. We set a new rule book that fit on one page. Common sense stuff. Don't be a jerk. Keep your yard not gross. No fake badges. No locking public water. Honor memorials. One evening, near sundown, I lit the string lights on the porch and sat under Dad's cross with Mom. The pecan tree threw shadows like lace across the grass that, yes, was finally green again. I told her about the day's wins and losses. I mentioned Karen only once a neighbor, not a villain. Mom patted my hand. "Your father would be proud," she said, voice soft. "Of me, of the fence posts," she teased. "You overbuilt them again." I laughed. Then, kinda choked up. Because it wasn't about winning. It was about keeping something small and sacred safe from the grind of people who confuse control with community. A week later, at the first open meeting in forever, Karen resigned. She read from a paper, voice thin. "For personal reasons," she said. She didn't look at anyone. She tucked the paper in her purse and left by the side door. No one clapped. Not out of meanness, out of mercy. We elected Mrs. Arroyo interim president. She ran the meeting with a gavel that looked suspiciously like a wooden spoon. "One-page rules," she said. "One heart." On Veterans Day, the neighborhood gathered under the pecan. We added 3 more little steel crosses for folks who asked, same rust brown, same river stones. Karen wasn't there, but her husband came. Quiet. Hands in pockets. He nodded at me. I nodded back. Truce. I never got my fines refunded. I never got an apology. That's okay. What I got was neighbors who waved with their whole arms, not just their fingers. I got water pressure and honest budgets, and a pool that sounded like water instead of metal grinding on metal. I got to keep Dad's spot under the tree. Sometimes, late, I sit on the porch and listen to the cicadas buzz, like a radio stuck between stations. I think about that first notice and how small I felt. And I think about a folding table covered in brisket, and a street full of hands raised under a hot Texas sun. People, when you give them the truth and a plate of food, will choose each other almost every time. So, yeah, that's how we beat a bully HOA without burning the place down. We read the fine print. We swung the light toward the receipts. We fed people. We turned neighbors back into neighbors. Now I gotta ask, what would you have done when they tried to lock your water and dig up your dad? Anyone else had an HOA go after something sacred in your yard? Drop your story below. I'm listening. The trouble with bullies is they hate clean exits. A month into our truce, I found a glossy flyer on my porch, tucked under the doormat like a snake under a rock. Cedar Hollow Community Improvement District. It said, with flowers around the edges, vote yes for safety. security, and standards. At the bottom, small, was the word assessment. I took it to the next meeting. Mrs. Arroyo smoothed the paper with her palm. They're trying to form a CID, she said. To do what the HOA did, only with the city's blessing. Wes read the fine print. It lets them levy a fee, hire security, enforce standards. This is a zombie HOA with a city badge. I felt the familiar heat. I breathed slow. Okay, I said. We fight ideas with better ideas. We organized a porch-to-porch walk. Not angry. Just honest. We knocked slow, polite knuckles and talked about what safety actually looks like. It looks like porch lights that work, and kids who know which houses are safe to run to. It looks like elders who have someone to call when a breaker pops. It looks like fewer rules and more phone numbers. Karen stayed quiet online, but we saw her watch. A white sedan idled at the corner when we canvassed tinted windows. A silhouette in the driver's seat that looked like the outline of her hair. I waved. The sedan rolled away. Election day. We set out coffee urns at the clubhouse at 6 in the morning. Because democracy runs better caffeinated. People came in pajamas and work boots and church shoes. They brought their kids. They asked questions. They voted no. By sunset. The CID was not dead. But it was limping so hard, it considered staying home. That night, I found a note in my mailbox. Handwritten. Shaky. I didn't know about the water locks. It read, I didn't know about the cousin. I voted yes before, because it felt easier. I voted no today. Thank you. No signature. No need. I told the pecan tree as the porch fan hummed. I think we're gonna be okay. Then came the storm. Cedar Hollow is flat as a griddle. And when the heavens decide to pour, our streets turn into creeks. Mid-August. The sky went bruised. Thunder rolled like a bowling alley. Rain came in with the sideways attitude of a drunk uncle. Gutters overflowed. The pool filled to the brim and started to slop into the hedges. I pulled on boots, grabbed a rake, started walking. At Oak and Juniper. I found the problem, a storm grate clogged with leaves. Plastic bags. One lost flip-flop. And a wad of flyers that looked an awful lot like Vote Yes for CID. Water swirled. Searching for a way down. Found none. Rose. A minivan floated an inch. A kid cried. Wes, I yelled. He splashed up. Rake over his shoulder like a pike. Clear it. We jammed the rakes in. Hauled out trash. Got a face full of twigs and street water. The grate burped. The street drank. People cheered like we'd scored a touchdown. 2 houses over. A downspout had popped. Water poured into a crawl space. Pooling dark and mean. I crawled in on my elbows. Flashlight between my teeth. I saw the fracture in the flex line and patched it with a roll of emergency tape I keep in the truck. When I slid back out, muddy as a hog, a neighbor I'd only ever seen glare at me for parking, crooked, handed me a towel. You saved my floor, he said. I misjudged you. I grinned. Spit out rainwater. Happens. By morning, the storm was gone. The streets were a mosaic of twigs and shimmer. The pecan tree dropped a bushel of green missiles. The pool looked like a pond. We made coffee. We swept. We fixed. And when the city truck rolled up, same clerk, same tie. He grinned at me like we were old conspirators. You Cedar Hollow folks are loud, but you're good, he said. A day later, a post went up on the neighborhood app. Thank you to everyone who helped during the storm, especially Noah. I didn't need the shout-out, but it stuck to me like a second son for the rest of the week. Which is why, when the next thing hit, I didn't crack. I just, breathed and got to work. At 2 in the morning, the Saturday after the storm, Mom woke me. Noah, she whispered. Someone's in the backyard. I grabbed the flashlight. Not a bat, stupid. Maybe. But I like to see what I'm swinging at. I slid the back door open. In the glow, a figure stood under the pecan tree. Head bowed. Shoulders shaking. Not a thief. A woman crying. She turned. Karen. I lowered the light. You okay? She swiped at her face, smudging mascara into a raccoon map. My mother's ashes, she said. The storm flooded the niche at the memorial garden. The urn. She fumbled for words like a person searching for a dropped ring in tall grass. There was water everywhere. I thought of your cross, and God. I didn't know where else to go. My first instinct was to say something sharp enough to cut. Instead, I breathed. Come inside. She stood in my kitchen, small with no heels, holding a mug in both hands like it was the only warm thing left in the world. Mom made tea and didn't ask questions. Karen stared at the cross through the window. It's rust dark against the wet green. I thought rules would keep everything from falling apart, she said. I thought, if I measured enough, find enough, controlled enough, I could. I do know. Hold it together. Sometimes, I said. Holding on is how we lose the grip. She let out a laugh that wasn't a laugh. You sound like a bumper sticker. Yeah, I said. I hate that. We stood quiet a long beat. Somewhere, a frog sang like an off-key violin. Karen set the mug down. I'm sorry, she said. Bare words. No spin. For the water. For the fines. For the she swallowed. I was awful. Yup, I said. Then, softer. I was awful back sometimes. She smiled without teeth. You gave me brisket. I was bribing the jury. She exhaled. May I? She nodded at the cross. Yeah, I said. Sit a while. We sat under the pecan until dawn smudged the horizon. Karen told me about her mom Eleanor, who kept a shoebox of seed packets and cried at parades. I told her about Dad, who cussed like poetry if you watched him fix a carburetor. We didn't solve anything cosmic. We didn't hug. When she left, she looked lighter and older at the same time. On Sunday, people saw Karen in her yard planting marigolds around a new stone she set by her porch. Just a name. Just a date. Just hers. No forms. No swatches. She planted them crooked. I like that. A week later, at the meeting, Karen did something that made the room go silent. She stood, cleared her throat, and said, I propose we adopt Noah's one-page rules. Mrs. Arroyo tilted her head. Which one page? I read them. Voice, steady. Be kind. Ask before you borrow. Don't block the water. Keep music to a neighborly level. Fly any flag that isn't hate. Mind your dogs. If you break something, you fix it, or you help pay for it. Memorials are sacred. Backyards are private. Front yards are the front porch of the street. If you disagree, bring food. Silence. Then a laugh. Then hands. Hands up. Hands clapping. Hands voting. The gavel wooden spoon came down. 1-page rules passed. The last piece. The one that made this whole saga close like a well-fitted gate. Clicked into place by accident. Remember that managed meter sticker? Turns out it was part of a bulk order paid with HOA funds months before the sunset. The auditor we hired found the invoice. Asked who authorized it. The answer was a shrug big enough to cover the city. Return the unused locks. The auditor said, "We already used them." Karen admitted. Eyes on the table. Then repay the HOA out of the admin fund. The auditor said, gentle, like a nurse with a needle. She did. Quietly. No press release. That's what accountability looks like when it's honest. Not performative. I wish I could say everybody lived happily ever after and nobody measured a mailbox again. People are still people. Someone complained about wind chimes last week. A guy down the block parks across his own sidewalk like he's allergic to right angles. We still argue about Halloween inflatables, too many. Too big. Too early. But the arguing sounds different now. Less sniper fire. More family kitchen. Someone brought empanadas to the last debate and, it's hard to be mean when you've got good food in your mouth. Last week, a new family moved in young. Unsure. Looking around like the first day at a new school. I walked over with a box of bulbs, zinnias, marigolds. A surprise mix Dad would have loved. The husband glanced at my pecan tree and the rust-brown cross and said, "We were worried about the HOA. Heard stories." "Me too," I said. Then grinned. We went and wrote our own. So, your turn. What would you do if a board tried to put a lock on your life and call it harmony? Would you fight, feed people, both anyone else dealt with expired covenants or a Karen who turned into a neighbor again? Tell me everything. It was the pool that nearly broke us. Not the water itself, that new pump hummed like a lullaby, but the fence. The contractor erected a sleek black aluminum barrier with vertical pickets. Looked good. Met code. Then a city inspector came back with a tape measure and a frown. Spacing is just a tick wide. Climbable, he said. Fix it or close the pool. We didn't have money for a full replacement. Not without raising dues. I felt the room tense while it's bracing. Tempers warming. I raised my hand. Give me Saturday. I called a buddy from my job sites. Gus tattoos. Heart like Texas. You got leftover 1/4-inch mesh, he laughed. I got a warehouse of it. We rolled out of his truck at sunrise with rolls of black-coated mesh. A bucket of zip ties. And coffee so strong it could cauterize a wound. We started at the shallow end. Noah and Gus. Two mechanics of community. Clipping. Stretching. Fastening. Making that fence toddler-proof without making it ugly. By 9. We had volunteers, teens with nimble fingers. Retirees with lawn chairs. A mom who brought a stapler that could probably attach a license plate to a boulder. We finished at noon. The inspector returned at 2. Measured. Nodded. Signed. Open. He said. And that's when I saw Karen by the gate. She'd been there all morning. Silent. Passing zip ties. Holding the mesh while we stretched it taut. Her hands were scuffed. I know because mine were too. We grinned at each other small. Tired. Real. That evening. The pool deck turned into a potluck. Steam rose from trays. Kids cannonballed with squeals that bounced off stucco walls. Someone set up a speaker and played old soul tunes. Mrs. Arroyo fell asleep in a lounge chair with a paper plate on her lap and a faint smile on her face. If there's a picture of what community actually means, it's probably that scene, not perfect. A little sticky. Absolutely alive. Near sunset. A man I hadn't seen before walked up, hat in hand. Eyes scanning the fence, like it was a blueprint he wanted to memorize. "You, Noah?" he asked. Voice like gravel. "Guilty." "I'm Ed," he said. "Bought the brick place on Pecan. Heard you're the guy to talk to about getting power to my shed. I'm the guy who knows a guy who's me." I yoked. He didn't smile. Then he did. A little. "I used to be the guy where I'm from." He stared at the water. Then, at the cross, you could just see through the trees. "I left a town where the HOA fined me for a ramp I built for my wife's chair," he said. "Said it wasn't aesthetic. When she died. I tore it out. I should have kept it. For her. For me." Something in my chest folded and unfolded. "We got different rules here," I said. He nodded. "I can tell. We wired his shed the next morning. It took 2 hours. 3 cuts on my knuckles. And a joke about GFCI outlets that wasn't funny but made us laugh anyway. He paid me with cash and a rusted tin of bolts you'll need someday." He wasn't wrong. A week later, a hinge on the clubhouse door swallowed too. The months that followed were quieter. Disputes still came: paint shades, hedge heights. A guy who wanted to install a chicken coop on a lot sized like a postage stamp. But they didn't come with threats. They came with questions. And questions. Ask clean. Or invitations. Then December brought lights. Lord. Did it bring lights? Someone on Sycamore went full runway synchronized LEDs. A Santa that could see over the fence line. A reindeer herd that looked like an actual herd. The kids loved it. One neighbor didn't. "Too bright," she said. "Too loud." We held a mini lights cord at the clubhouse with cookies and cocoa. We listened. We nodded. We asked the Santa folks to set the music to end by 9 on school nights. The complainant accepted a set of blackout curtains from the craft table. A kid crafted a sign that said, "Lights at night bring joy." Keep the sound, not coy, bad rhyme. Great spirit. If you're hearing that and thinking it sounds corny, yeah, it was. It also were. On Christmas Eve, Karen surprised everyone. She walked down the cul-de-sac with paper bags that held luminarias, little candles in sand, placing them along the sidewalk. A chain of warm dots led to the pool deck, where a table held remembrance cards. People wrote names. We set the cards at the base of the cross. The air smelled like wax and cinnamon. For someone who once worshipped compliance, Karen had found her way to a different kind of order. The alignment of people trying. Imperfect and sincere. I'm not naive. Power still tempts. This spring, a new candidate ran for treasurer with vows to restore discipline and elevate our standards. My jaw tightened. But then Ed, the man with the shed, stood and spoke in a voice that shook. My standards got elevated once. Until my wife couldn't get in our house. I prefer kindness. The room clapped. Then voted. That candidate lost by a lot. And the memorial, it grew. Not big. Not gaudy. Just a handful more crosses and stones, each different. Each the same. Sometimes a kid will tie a ribbon. Sometimes a veteran will rest a palm on one and close his eyes like he's steadying himself on a moving train. No forms. No swatches. Just people making meaning. I still get a twinge when I see a clipboard. I still overbuild fence posts. I still call the city clerk about weird stickers. I brought him a pie last week. He said I'm his favorite homeowner. Then added, "Don't tell the others." I told them anyway. Part of community is letting people know when they're appreciated. Part of it is telling stories so no one forgets how we got here. So here I am, telling you. If you're staring down a Karen with a lock for your water and a hand for your wallet, you are not powerless. Read the fine print. Knock on doors. Feed your neighbors. Find your Mrs. Arroyo. Find your Gus. Keep receipts. Keep your humor. When you can. Invite the villain to tea. You might find a person who lost her map. And hey, if you've had a sunset clause, save your hide. Or you've cooked a big pot of shut up and eat to calm a meeting. Drop your tips below. What worked? What backfired gloriously? What would you do different if you could rewind to that first notice on your door? What would you do if a developer tried to turn your neighborhood's greenbelt into a back road for delivery trucks and called it progress? The notice showed up like a yellow splinter in the grass. Public hearing rezoning request. A company with a wholesome name, Sycamore Creek Ventures, wanted to pave a narrow lane through our drainage swale, cut around the pool, and connect to the highway. On paper, it was traffic calming. In real life, it would funnel box trucks past our kids on bikes and the memorial under my pecan. I felt the slow burn crawl up my neck. I took photos. I measured the swale with a tape line and a bad attitude. Then I knocked on Karen's door. She opened it, wearing gardening gloves and a t-shirt that said, "Be nice." No irony. "You saw the sign," she said. "Yup," I said. "You ready to be the hero this time?" She laughed. A short ha that sounded surprised to live in her throat. "I've been sorta waiting for the chance." We divided the work like we were back in a shop class that actually mattered. I pulled plats and flood maps. Karen pulled agendas and speaker sign-up rules. I built a diagram of truck turning radiuses out of cardboard, string, and a level stolen from my own garage wall. Karen built a binder so neat it could have won a pageant. Wes gathered signatures with the persistence of a church usher and the gentleness of a big dog who thinks he's a lap puppy. Mrs. Arroyo baked empanadas for fortification, which is Spanish for "we're finna fight, but kindly." At the pre-hearing open house, a guy with cologne, the shape of money, smiled too wide and said words like activation and synergy and win-win. He tapped our greenbelt on the rendering like it was an empty shelf at a store. "This lane will add value." I said. "Value for who?" "For everyone. There's people who live right here," Karen said, tapping the map where the memorial sits. "We already have value." He smiled tighter. "We'll plant new trees." I pointed out the drainage grades and how their lane would choke the culvert during a storm. Karen pointed out the easement language that said, "In polite legales, don't mess with city water." Wes pointed to his own eyes and then to the crowd in that way that says we are watching. The rep handed us a pamphlet. We handed it back. The night of the hearing, the council chamber smelled like floor polish and nerves. We sat shoulder to shoulder. I felt Mom's hand pat my knee. Calm as rain on tin. Karen's binder sat in her lap like armor. When our agenda item was called, Sycamore Creek rolled out a smooth slideshow. Truck icons glided like ballerinas. Birds chirped in the background track. The rep said benefits enough times the word lost meaning. Then it was us. I stepped up. The mic was too tall. I adjusted it, which always makes you look unprepared even when you rehearsed. My name's Noah, I said. Electrician. Cedar Hollow. I carry wrenches. Not degrees. But I carry history. I lifted the old plat with the watery blue lines. This swale saved our homes last August. It backed up once. And a driveway flooded. You pave over that with something cute on a screen. You're gonna turn a storm into a soup. Your trucks will be pushing wake. I showed the string and cardboard turn model. It looked goofy. It worked. The string hit the edge of my little pool cutout and snagged. That's a delivery van on a good day, I said. Now make it a box truck in a hurry. Karen followed. Her voice didn't shake. Our covenants expired, she said. And we learned the hard way what power without love does. Tonight is about love with power. She held up her binder. You have 3 things to consider: the easement that says that swale is for water, the comprehensive plan that says residential streets are not freight corridors, and the neighbors who will pick your council yard signs in the spring if you listen. A tiny smile flickered. Sorry. That last one was too honest. It got a chuckle, but more than that. It got ears. Then Ed stepped up, hat in hands. I built a ramp for my wife once, he said. Voice like gravel, softened with rain. Someone told me it wasn't pretty. I took it down. She fell. I've been regretting listening to the wrong people ever since. Don't put trucks where kids live. Don't let pretty pictures convince you to do the ugly thing. You could feel the temperature of the room change. The council asked questions. The city engineer, yep. Our avocado tie friend coughed and said, the swale's capacity is, non-negotiable. The vote wasn't immediate. Because nothing good ever is. But they delayed the rezoning and asked for community alternatives. We brought one within a week. A pocket park plan sketched on grid paper and hope a little walking loop. A bench under the pecan. A native plant buffer to help the swale drink better when the clouds get bossy. We added a small sign, Memorial Garden, quiet after dusk. Loud, with stories before. The developer rolled his eyes. The council did not. They added our plan to the conditions list. 2 weeks later, Sycamore Creek withdrew. No speech. No apology. Just a short memo that felt like silence with a bow on it. I wanted to throw a party. We built instead. Over 3 Saturdays. Cedar Hollow became a job site with a soundtrack. Gus brought his mesh again, and this time used it to frame a little footbridge over the shallowest part of the swale. Teens hauled mulch like champions. Kids painted smooth rocks with names and hearts, and a dog paw that might, generously, be a paw and not a potato. Karen installed a wooden bench. She sanded herself. I kept trying to make it a tad straighter. She slapped my hand. Crooked gives it soul, she said, grinning, and, saves my sanity. On the second Saturday, a city truck pulled up. The clerk hopped out, looked around, and whistled. Y'all were loud when you were mad, he said. You're louder, in a better way now. He set down a metal post with a small green sign, Pocket Park Cedar Hollow. He winked. Don't tell anybody I had an extra. We told everybody. The park, like all living things, needed rules. Not a booklet. A plank at the entrance. Burned in with a cheap wood burner. Share. Clean up. Be gentle with the names. If you disagree, bring food. Someone, probably one of the teens, with nicer handwriting than mine, added, no trucks. Life. Being life. didn't stop sending smaller storms. A package thief hit the cul-de-sac near dusk one Friday. Hoodie up. Scooter quick. A thread lit up the app accusations. Grainy photos. A "we need gates" chorus. Instead of gates, we made a porch patrol. Not security. Just neighbors on their stoops, at likely delivery hours, with lemonade and eyes. Mail theft dropped like a stone. The teens, God bless them, started a silly porch light challenge, where you got points for creative fixtures, and double points for fixtures you offered to install for a neighbor who couldn't do it themselves. I watched a kid named Tyler teach a grandpa named Mr. Sing how to change a bulb with a step stool and swagger. That's urban planning I can live with. Y'all. The next flare-up was about privacy cameras. One neighbor set a lens that peeked across fences, and people felt weird. We convened a backyard summit with lawn chairs and iced tea. I printed a little diagram of camera cones and said, "If your lens sees a thing you wouldn't want a stranger to see if you were doing laundry in your backyard on a hot day, tilt it." He tilted it. The summit dissolved into a game of cornhole that I lost badly because I talk a bigger game than my beanbags deliver. Then came fireworks. Lord, help us. Dale on Cypress likes things that go boom. Karen hates things that go boom. The first fourth, after our ceasefire. We set up a compromise that looked like a block party with a timer. Dale brought legal fountains that fizzed like a soda. Karen brought her luminarias early. At 9 sharp. We did a quiet minute for the names at the memorial. Then we lit the fountains, and the kids squealed, and nobody lost a finger. It wasn't Norman Rockwell, it was ours. Around late summer, I got a call from a number I didn't have saved. A woman's voice said, "Is this Noah? I heard you're the one who, helps with ramps." It was Ed's neighbor, Miss Vi. Her sister, Jo, had busted a hip. I told her I'd be there Saturday with lumber, screws, a level, and, you know, my chronic overbuilding. When I pulled up, I found Karen already there, with a miter saw she borrowed and the look of someone who showed up to make amends with sweat. We built a ramp that was so pretty, even the old HOA version of Karen would have approved. Ed cried exactly once, and we pretended not to see. We added grip tape and a chevron, because I can't resist overkill. Jo wheeled down it that afternoon and yelled, "I feel like a parade float," which is the best blessing I've ever earned. Not everything was victory laps. A tree service showed up one Tuesday with orders to remove interfering vegetation near the power lines. They pointed at my pecan and a red X on their clipboard. My stomach dropped into my boots. I argued. They shrugged. "We just follow the ticket." I called the city clerk. Then the utilities vegetation manager. Then the council aide, whose voicemail greeting I can recite from memory. We got a halt. A review. A compromise. Selective pruning. No red X. The foreman walked me through which limbs had to go for clearance. I negotiated like a hostage-taker for every branch that cast shade on the memorial. We saved the crown. When the crew left, I picked up fallen sticks, whispered, "Sorry" to the tree, and promised to water it extra. Like that actually matters. Maybe it does. The fall brought a different kind of test. A rumor that short-term rentals would flood the block. People got edgy. A guy posted a rant about strangers in crime. I reminded him that I was a stranger once. And his wife brought me Tupperware. We drafted a simple pledge, a voluntary one. Because that's who we are now. If you host, you tell your neighbors. You share a number. You put a simple quiet after 10 note on the fridge. One host brought muffins to both sides of her place on changeover day. The neighbor who ranted now says hi to suitcases. It ain't policy. It's manners. Here's the thing nobody tells you about living through a long HOA war when the adrenaline cools. You've got to decide what kind of quiet you want. The kind where everyone hides to avoid conflict. Or the kind where you wave, still argue sometimes, and keep showing up. We picked the second because the first tastes like dust. One Sunday evening, the sky went orange and pink, like sherbet melting. I sat on the porch with Mom, listening to cicadas and the low hum of the new pool pump doing its honest work. Karen walked up slow, hands in pockets, and nodded at the cross. Eleanor would have loved those marigolds, she said. Your mom had taste, I said. She laughed. Questionable in men, great in flowers. We both looked at the pocket park, where kids were chalking a hopscotch with more squares than any human could jump. Wes strolled by with a bag of trash he didn't have to pick up, but did. Mrs. Arroyo glared at the sky until it decided to be less windy. Gus drove past. Honked twice in our weird code that means you need anything I didn't. Not right then. Do you ever miss the control? I asked. Karen considered it. Sometimes, she said. Then I remember it was eating me. This tastes better. Like brisket, I said. Don't get cocky. I mean, we earned a little cocky. If you've been keeping score, here's where we landed. No trucks through the heart of us. A pocket park that belongs to everyone. A memorial that keeps gathering names the same way it keeps gathering shade. One-page rules that fit on a plank. A community that shows up for storms, hearings, ramps, and yes, cornhole. We don't fine. We feed. We don't weaponize rules. We use them like guardrails so the road feels safe enough to sing on. And because this is real life, not a movie, tomorrow will bring some new glitch. A fence built 1 inch too tall. A baseline too thumpy after midnight. A mailbox leaning like it's tired of holding letters. We'll fix it. Or we'll argue and then fix it. We'll get it wrong and apologize. We'll get it right and forget to celebrate. And someone will bring cake and fix that too. Your turn. Neighbors on the internet. If a developer tried to slide a cute little lane through your block, what's your play? Who's your Karen-turned partner? You're Wes, with quiet strength. You're Mrs. Arroyo, with the wooden spoon gavel. Anyone out there built a pocket park, out of stubbornness and love? Tell me how you fought City Hall without losing your soul, or how you found it again on the other side. What if the power went out for 3 days, and the only rules that mattered were the ones you wrote on a scrap of cardboard? The blackout hit on a Wednesday. Late summer. When the air felt like hot syrup, and the cicadas were working overtime. 1 minute the ceiling fan hummed. The next, it hiccuped. Slowed. And stopped like a tired horse. Across Cedar Hollow, you could hear the chorus, little groans. A couple of oddie people. Come on. And one distant whelp that made me grin despite the heat. I checked the breaker. Then the street. Dark as a theater before the show. The pocket park sat still. The pool, glossy and quiet. The memorial, a darker slice against the dusky lawn. I felt that old reflex I inherited from Dad's years at the firehouse. Count the risks. Move your feet. I grabbed my cooler, my headlamp, 2 battery lanterns, and the dusty generator I keep tuned like religion. I wheeled it to the porch, mindful not to bark my shins on the step I keep meaning to fix. Mom met me with a bag of ice, and that look that says, pace yourself. Son. I wrote on a piece of cardboard with a thick black marker charging station. Water. Ice. Check on neighbors. Bring extension cords. Be kind. I tied it to the porch post with twine. Karen walked up, holding a stack of sticky notes and a pen like a conductor with a baton. We're making a list, she said. Folks with oxygen machines. Folks with meds that need a fridge. New parents. Elders alone. She said elders like it was treasure, not burden. I nodded. Let's be loud in the good way. Within an hour, Cedar Hollow had a rhythm. Wes and Ed dragged out their coolers. Teens set up a kiddie pool and filled it with melting ice for drinks, like they were staging a tailgate for resilience. Mrs. Arroyo parked in a lawn chair near the memorial with a clipboard, a sun hat, and a steel water bottle that matched her steel will. Gus tuned generators for people who'd yanked them out of garages with optimism but no clue. Someone brought a case of solar lanterns. Someone brought fans. Someone brought jokes that, weren't funny but made us breathe easier. There's people who get twitchy when the lights go out, who reach for control like it's oxygen. Dale on Cypress is one of them. He rolled up with a trunk of fireworks like he was gonna make his own son. Don't, Karen said. Calm out. He scowled. It's dark. I pointed at the parched lawns and the heat like a warning. It's also dry. He shrugged. Then, miracle of miracles, put the lid back on the box and stayed to serve lemonade like a man who just learned a second language. Night swallowed the neighborhood whole. The stars, when was the last time we'd actually stared at them, poured out like a spilled jar of nails on black velvet. I stood under the pecan and thought of Dad in brush gear, soaked to the bone, grinning like a fool because the hose line held and the house stood, and sometimes that's enough. Miss you, old man, I said. And, felt that ping in my throat I pretend is just allergies. In the dark, the pocket park turned into headquarters. We drew a map with chalk on the asphalt who needed what, who had what. Karen worked the question station like she'd been waiting her whole life to use her powers for something that didn't require a fine. You got asthma, she'd ask. Here's a fan. You need to charge your phone. Third porch on the left. Don't trip over the dog. He's friend-shaped. She did it with humor. With a little bossiness, she's Karen. After all, but also with a humility that made you want to pitch in. On day 2, the heat came mean. We set up shade using tarps and leftover mesh, and the kind of knot Dad taught me that never slips until you cuss it. A kid nearly fainted. We iced him. Sat him down. Let the smallest fan we had lick his face. He came back to life like a cartoon flower after rain. He called me sir and I pretended not to like it. I liked it. Late afternoon. A white pickup crawled the street, selling generators, at a price you could only call gouging if you were being polite. The driver shouted about limited stock and cash now. People looked at me. I didn't lead, I just walked up slow. Not here, I said. We're sharing. He tossed a freedom something at me. I pointed at the cardboard sign with be kind underlined twice. Karen stepped up beside me. Take your hustle to the highway, she said. And dang if her eyebrows didn't do more policing than any badge. He left. We cheered soft. Then, we made a tool library on my porch, with duct tape labels, extension cords, fans, phone bricks. Don't hoard. On day 3, down near the end of Juniper, a transformer groaned, popped, and spit a blue tongue of arc. A limb smoldered on a fence. There's a smell to that, a scary, sweet burnt sugar stink that makes your bones remember fire, even if you've never been close. I grabbed the extinguisher from my truck, ran, sprayed, swore. Wes dragged a hose. The nozzle sputtered once and then ran strong because the city water was still there. Thank God. Thank that letter. Thank that fight. We doused it. Waited. Doused it again. I could hear Dad's voice in my head. Wet it. Then wet it more. We did. We saved a fence post and, maybe, a house. When the power finally came back midnight. Third day. The street flickered like a stadium after a win. A cheer went up. Ragged and sincere. People hugged with the awkwardness of neighbors who hadn't hugged before the blackout but might again. The one-page rules looked at us from the plank and felt, I dunno, both quaint and perfect. We'd made it through, not because someone enforced, but because everyone showed up. After the blackout, we took a breath and built something to catch future storms. A permanent tool library. A little shed by the clubhouse, with labels burned into cedar tarps. Fans. Ice chests. Lanterns. Chargers. First aid. Extra dignity. That last one was a joke. We left the shelf empty on purpose, to remind ourselves that dignity multiplies when you share it. Karen organized a phone tree that actually worked. The teens turned their porch light challenge into a regular home safety check-in and, RD bless, added a teach a tech thing to an elder day. I watched Tyler show Mr. Singh how to set his phone to battery saver and thought maybe the future isn't cancellations and rants. Maybe it's small kindnesses stacked like bricks. Cedar Hollow didn't just heal, it got contagious. A neighborhood across town called to ask about our one-page rules. I printed them, drove over with a box of donuts, and told the long, messy story, the water locks, the sunset clause, the brisket diplomacy, the park built from stubbornness, the blackout, their board president, a woman with wary eyes and a polite smile, said, "We can't do that here." I shrugged. We didn't think we could either. Then we did one small thing. Then another. She took a donut, bit it, laughed. Sugar helps. It does. The city invited us to a civic resilience night at the community center. They put us on a panel like we were experts, which made me laugh so hard I nearly choked on the sandwich I ate in the hallway. I said, I got no degrees. I got a generator and a tendency to overbuild fence posts. The room chuckled. The avocado tie clerk promoted now. Ty upgraded to something that looked like he'd learned color theory, introduced us, and said very official words about subsidiarity and mutual aid. I said plainer words, turn enemies into neighbors when you can. Feed 'em if you can't. Karen, God love her, stood and admitted she used to dream in fines. I thought control would keep us safe. She said, turns out, trust is stickier. The room went quiet, then warm. After, someone asked for our rule plank. I said I'd send a picture. Karen said she'd send a cookie recipe. Both seem essential. Not everything stayed shiny. A month later, someone keyed a line down Ed's truck. Old grudges flare like back pain. We put out a coffee can that said, truck fix. People dropped in bills. Coins. A note that read, sorry for the world being mean sometimes. We covered the paint. We didn't cover the scar. Ed laughed soft and said, "I kind of like it. Reminds me I stayed." Another morning, I found the cross under the pecan with a ribbon tied to it blue. Fraying. Sweet. A tag hung from it, for Dad. From a kid you don't know. I sat on the porch with that ribbon crinkling in my fist, and felt something that tasted like grief, but bubbled at the edges with joy, like soda tears. I told Mom. She squeezed my shoulder and said, "People know what's holy if you give them time." In late fall, we threw a block party, so ordinary it felt radical. No agenda, just music. Folding tables, deviled eggs, and jokes, so old they came around the mountain and got funny again. I smoked meat till my eyes stung. Karen brought an entire tray of humility bars, which tasted suspiciously like lemon squares, but eyes kinder. Mrs. Arroyo whacked a wasp out of the punch bowl with the wooden spoon she uses as a gavel. Gus taught a kid to tie rebar wire. Wes gave exactly 0 speeches and the exact right number of hugs. At dusk, we lit the luminarias again. The pocket park glowing like a landing strip for good decisions. A new couple, the Millers, moved into the house with the droopy gutters. They walked over nervous. "We heard stories," she said, "about HOAs. I waved at the park. At the plank. At the cross. "We got stories too," I said. "Some of 'em got teeth. Most of 'em end with cake." She laughed. Relieved. He pointed at the memorial and said, "Is it okay to put a stone?" I nodded. "It's okay to grieve in public. That's kind of our thing. You want the last hard truth. No one knighted us. No sheriff gave out civic medals. The bills still come. The pool needs new tiles. The pocket park gets muddy when it rains. And the kids stomp through anyway. And their parents sigh, and the washing machines work overtime, and the world keeps being the world. But we know how to meet it now, porch by porch. Hand by hand. With a 1-page rule set and a habit of bringing food to every disagreement. Tonight, the porch light throws a gold puddle on the steps. The air's got that just right weight, like a soft blanket, not a storm in sight. The pecan's leaves chitter gossip. The pocket park is empty, but for the bench with its one crooked leg that I refuse to fix, 'cause Karen said crooked gives it soul. Mom hums in the kitchen. I can smell cinnamon. Maybe it's the humility bars again. Maybe it's toast. Either way, it smells like home. I look at Dad's cross and think about where we started. Me with my smart mouth. Karen with her clipboard crown. A waterlock that had no right to be there. A rule book that had expired without anyone noticing. I think about hand votes in heat, and a city clerk who showed up when it counted, and how a neighborhood turns back into a neighborhood when you invite it. I think about how control is a brittle thing, and care is rubbery. It stretches, it returns. So, if you're watching this in your own kitchen, your own porch, your own stubborn house, where a tree drops the wrong leaves on the wrong day, and you've got a letter on your door that makes you feel small, look at me. Neighbor, you are not small. You have hands. You have a voice. You have a grill. Maybe. Or a crock pot. Or just a folding table and a box of store cookies. You have people who don't know they're your people yet. What would you do if your HOA tried to lock your water? Pave your park? Or tell you grief needs a swatch? Would you feed them? Fight them. Kindly. Read the fine print till it sings. Anyone else made 1 page of rules that saved 1,000 headaches. Drop your story. Drop your trick. Drop your failure that turned into the thing that actually worked. I'm all ears, and if you're close enough to Cedar Hollow, I'll save you a plate.